your host, Lew Sitzer. This is Climate Changes, and we're doing a special program, an hour-long program today, because it is featuring Focus the Nation, a national teach-in on climate change. And what that means is that universities throughout the country will be taking a day to educate students about climate. And that's what we're going to be doing here with 5 local experts. Actually, at the moment there are 4 because Bethany Jones from Truckee is hopefully on her way down here. We're in the midst of a snowstorm and Highway 80 is closed. It's ironic because we're talking about global warming on a day where we are getting plenty of snow. But if Bethany comes in during the show, we'll mic her up and she'll be able to contribute as an organizer of the Sierra Business Council in Truckee, a very active organization in the Sierra. But let me introduce first our panelists, Janet Cohen from the Community Action Partners, who will also be talking about the Sierra Alliance. Carrie Timmer from the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, and Gary Reedy from Circle, Renette Senham from Power Up Nevada City. And so before we begin, I wanted to also mention as a clarification so that you're not just laughing in your seats about global warming while we're having a snowstorm. I wanted to mention the difference between weather and climate. Weather is something that happens day to day, week to week, month to month, and is variable and somewhat unpredictable, such as the cold winter that we're having right now, when you might think with global warming we would be having a warmer winter. But in fact, climate is something that is tracked over many, many years and looks at trends, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. The climate changes that the planet is going through and how that will impact our particular area, even though we're getting a lot of snowfall this year, which is great for us in terms of water storage and the environment. But over time, as you'll see and hear about, the climate has been changing and will continue to do so. So first, I'd like to start with Janet. Thanks for being here, Janet.
Thanks for asking me. And I feel something of a fraud. I mean, around 3 years ago, I was asked to research and write about climate change for the Sierra Nevada Alliance in order to put together a toolkit for people working in the Sierra to sort of tell them the information about what was happening with climate change. And, you know, I had always sort of believed that climate change was happening, you know, sort of as an environmentalist, I just believed that it was happening, but didn't really know very much about it. Your explanation of weather and climate is really useful because, you know, generally we were tending to say, well, it seems pretty cold to me today. And the science of climate change had not got out there. This was pre-Al Gore. And what I found when I started researching was that the science was absolutely there, but that the scientists had not been able to bridge that gap between their information and getting it out to the public. And that's really what Al Gore did. But before I'd seen the film and before Al Gore had done his film, I started researching and found some extraordinary information, mainly from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and also from organizations like the Union of Concerned Scientists. And the state of California had been doing a lot of research too. And I started gaily researching on the internet and looking at publications and talking to people, interviewing a lot of scientists. And it really struck home when, and we'll go to my first slide, when I saw this first slide as to what was happening. And this is a map of the polar ice that has been, the red outline is where the polar ice cap was in 1979, and then the white is where it is today. Now, why this struck home with me is because my son was born in 1979, so I could see a real difference in someone's lifetime, in someone who I knew very well, in a massive, massive change that was happening to the Earth and to the world as we knew it. And it was like, well, if this has happened in my son's lifetime, will it be there by the end of his lifetime? And the second slide, if you can go to that, shows, it's another graphic illustration of what's happening to the polar ice cap. we've got 1885 on the left, 1985, which is significantly shrunk, sort of another representation of what you just saw in the previous slide. And really 2085 is, if we don't do anything about it, there is going to be very, very little left of the polar ice cap. And at this point, we can go off that slide now, but not onto the next one yet. But at this point, I decided that really, rather than writing this book, I should probably be walking around in sackcloth and ashes, ringing a bell, because everything I was seeing was actually really pointing to terrible things happening. It wasn't in the news. It wasn't, as I say, Al Gore's film hadn't come out. You couldn't watch that on a plane crossing the Atlantic, as I did several months later. And nobody seemed to be taking any action on these really dire things that I was seeing. Another example of what I was seeing was, if you go to the next slide, is how global temperatures are going way through the roof. And if this is showing the past 140 years, and clearly since 1980, we've had a meteoric rise, and it's going way further. And this is a global picture from the last.
Where are these taken from? Let's say the information, the data that's gathered and we're looking at.
The 1850 to 2000 record is the U.S. Meteorological Survey has that. The next slide, though, if you can go to that one, is the Northern Hemisphere in the past 1,000 years. And obviously no one was monitoring in the past 1,000 years, in America anyway. There's actually very, very good, about 500 years of pretty good meteorological observation in Europe. And in fact, what I was finding in a lot of my research was that Europe was way further ahead for a multitude of reasons.
Further ahead in what ways?
Further ahead in understanding climate change, accepting climate change, and adapting to climate change. They have things, floating houses in Holland, things like that. There are checklists that I saw for builders in England, your climate change checklist, basically, as to what you should be looking for and how you should adapt. And still, at this point, 3 years ago, no, it didn't seem like anyone was doing very much. The 1,000-year record is really put together from paleoclimatologists, people who study, tree rings and things like that, and look at the historical record.
Ice cores.
Yes, absolutely. So again, you can see this vast increase in recent temperatures in the recent 20th in the 20th century.
So there are some dips, but in terms of looking at the latest information, let's say the last 20 years, it seems like a fairly precipitous rise.
Yeah, 11 of the last 12 years, 1995 to 2007, rank among the 12 hottest years on record since 1850, when sufficient worldwide temperature measurements began. Over the last, I can just go on and on with this stuff, but I'll give you another couple of really cool little things. On average, between 1950 and 1993, nighttime temperature, air temperature, increased at about twice the rate of daytime temperature. And that's very important for lots of species. They depend on nighttimes being cooler. I won't go on because you end up with this sackcloth and ashes scenario, which isn't always the best thing to do. The fourth slide I have, though, is a picture of, this is a picture of a glacier in Glacier National Park. In 1910, it contained 150 glaciers. There's only 30 left, and they're a third of their original size. And you can see the top picture on the right has a fairly substantial glacier, and it's sort of gone in the picture on the right, on the bottom. And this is, I think in California, this is the case in everywhere but Shasta. For some reason or another, Shasta is growing, the glacier there. But it's an anomaly. It's a strange little ecosystem of its own there. A study of 67 glaciers in Alaska showed that in the 40 years from the mid-1950s to the mid-1990s, these glaciers thinned by an average of about 1.6 feet a year. And they repeated the measurements in the mid-1990s. The rate of thinning had increased to nearly 6 feet a year.
And so in terms of loss of glaciers, what would you think the impacts of loss of glaciers? You might be talking about this later, but to make the connection now, so we lose some glaciers. What does that actually mean in terms of the environment?
I think that it's almost, I mean, to be fairly glib about it, it's the tip of the iceberg. Really, if you're seeing an ecosystem disappearing that was formed over millions and millions of years, and it's never going to come back.
The formation of glaciers
precisely.
itself takes
So if you're talking
eons.
about, but that goes for forests, that goes for oceans, that goes for many of the things we take for granted. And it's really, as I say, a very obvious demonstration of what climate change is doing. So if we can go on to the next slide, that would be good. This is a fairly complex graph showing what will happen in California in particular. This is showing 3 different climate change scenarios on the right, basically saying that if we don't do anything about emissions, everything in the bright orange, we're going to have a 90% loss in Sierra snowpack, 2.5 times more critically dry years, and 20% increase in energy demand. And it goes slightly down in the lesser colors there, but essentially we're looking at a vast change in the Sierra, both in snowpack, in forest yields, wildfires, increase in electricity demand, bad days, deaths through heat, and so on and so forth. And this really is a graph that shows that we have to do something, or else the worst scenario will happen. And I think I've more or less used up the time that I have. There are several other things we can come back to, but
right. And the warming up of the environment not only is indicated by the melting of glaciers, the loss of snowpack, but also water storage, and I think
absolutely.
we'll probably get into some of those issues in the next 45 minutes.
Certainly for skiers amongst us, you're going to have to head down to Mount Whitney if you want to ski in the Sierra, because northern Sierra snow is going to be very different.
And on that note, I want to welcome Bethany Jones from the Sierra Business Council and Truckee, showing that Truckee folks are tough. Neither rain nor sleet nor snow will get in your way. So welcome to the show. And
it's actually snowing harder down here than it was up there, but apparently people don't know how to drive because they closed 80.
Well, at least we can enjoy the snow here without worrying about you now. So next is Carrie talking about the Sierra Nevada Conservancy and the perspective that organization brings. Carrie?
Right, thank you. Thank you for having me here today. This is a wonderful opportunity. You might wonder why the Conservancy is sitting at this table, because we are not the state agency that is typically responsible for things having to do specifically with climate change. But we do have as our area of interest the entire Sierra Nevada region. And if we can show the map, you'll see exactly what that encompasses. It's quite large.
We have to move on from this map. This is showing the lack of snow for skiers in the future.
Which is, of course, of great interest to most of us who choose to live here in the Sierra. But if you see when you see the map that shows the boundary of the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, you'll see that we cover 22, all or parts of 22 counties out of the 54, I think, that make up the state of California. And that's roughly 25 million acres of landmass and water resources in the state of California. You can see it now on the map. So there's lots of things going on within this area that are both a result of climate change and that are potentially going to impact climate change as we anticipate it to affect us here in the region. The Sierra Nevada Conservancy we cover 40 incorporated cities, 212 individual communities, and countless jurisdictions at all levels of government. So it's a fairly complex system that we are working within. But what's important about the Sierra, and this is what we hope people will start to recognize, is that we provide about 2/3 of the state's water resources. We export that water out of the Sierra Nevada region for use down in the valley for agriculture, in the urban areas of the state for drinking, residential drinking water, and so forth. In addition to the water resources, we have a growing tourism industry with roughly 50 million visits per year to the wide range of resources that we offer in the Sierra. We're also, we provide the habitat for roughly 2/3 of the animals that exist in this state and about 50% of the reptiles and amphibians. So this region is critically important, which is why the Conservancy especially believes that we need to address climate change issues head on, and we need to address them in the sense of what the impacts are here in the Sierra and how the Sierra itself can play a role in addressing what we think is coming down the pike for us based on the research that Janet has talked about and that other panelists will talk about later. One thing I want to explain about the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, we are somewhat different from other conservancies in the state. There are 9 altogether. And we are an official state agency. We operate under the umbrella of the Resources Agency. And most conservancies have as their primary focus the protection of natural resources, which is fairly obvious in the name. However, because of all the things that we just described, the values and benefits of the Sierra Nevada as a region, we have a much broader mission than most every other conservancy. So we deal with recreation and tourism, protection of working landscapes, the ranches and farms and so forth. Also cultural and historic resources and community sustainability and other things. So we have lots of different program areas that go beyond just natural resource protection. And there are a couple of photos I think we have that might interest people in terms of expressing some of the great values that are protected through the Conservancy and the efforts of everybody really sitting at this table.
Now this one looks close by.
Yes. Somebody else identified it in the room as Serene Lakes, was it, Rich? Sardine Lakes, sorry. So that's right here in the Sierra Buttes, basically almost our backyard. And I think most people can relate to this next photograph, the great and wonderful oak woodland areas that the Sierra Nevada contains in it, especially in the foothills. And what's interesting really about the oak woodland areas is that they're primarily privately owned. And so they need particular attention and protection so that we don't lose any more of them, because they offer such a wide range of habitat values and other values. So that is an area that is of great interest to us at the Conservancy, to work with private partners, private landowners, to come up with solutions that help keep those important areas protected. And so the Conservancy itself has many tools that we can offer and services that we can provide to people as a state agency. One of the primary ones that maybe some folks who may be watching tonight would know about is the grant program. We, we receive funding through propositions, most recently Proposition 84, which is a water quality and watershed health protection bond act that passed by the voters of the state of California. And out of Prop 84, we, the Conservancy, received funding that we can now distribute to nonprofit organizations, to local, state, and federal government agencies, tribal entities, and so forth, to do the great work on the ground. And we have some folks sitting right here at the table who have taken advantage of that opportunity. We have a couple of different kinds of grant programs, and I won't go into that level of detail here, but please do contact me if anybody has questions about our grant programs. You can also find extensive information on our website, which we'll show later, I think.
We're showing it right now.
Perfect.
So good timing.
Excellent. And in addition to the grant program that we have, we also offer technical assistance. So if you are developing a project that maybe addresses climate change issues or watershed protection or community sustainability, we can offer our own resources within the Conservancy, as well as potentially connect you with other resources at the state. So I hope that people watching will view us as a major resource as they look at project development and so forth. We do offer more than just money, although I realize money is critically important.
Your office is now in Auburn?
We are headquartered in Auburn. We do also, though, in order to better serve this large service area, we do have area offices as well. We have one up in Susanville that services the northern portion of our region. We have another in Mariposa, and then a third down in Bishop on the east side. So we spread ourselves widely in the hopes that we can really be on the ground in the community and help people where they live instead of asking them to come where we live. And the other thing that we really are focused on is outreach and education. And I think that's primarily our closest tie right now to the climate change issue. We recently, in December, hosted a climate change symposium, which is the first of what we hope will be many annual symposia in the future. And we chose as our topic for the first symposium climate change. But again, we really wanted to focus the symposium on climate change as it impacts the Sierra Nevada. So the first half of the symposium was we addressed, or we got an overview really from Dr. Dan Kahan, who is an incredible specialist whom Janet knows well. And he instructed us on what to expect in the Sierra in terms of potential impacts.
This is part of the symposium that took place at Miners Foundry.
That's right, we're right here in Nevada City, in fact.
We had hundreds of people in attendance.
Over 300 people, which was very exciting for us as our first event out the door to have that much interest expressed in our agency and in this topic throughout the region. We had people lined up at the front door waiting to get in. It was quite exciting. But what was really exciting to me about the symposium, and to most of us at the Conservancy, I think, was the focus on action that individuals can take, action that communities can take, and particularly what the communities in the Sierra can contribute toward dealing with and addressing issues related to climate change. So that encompassed both reducing the activities that might add to the impacts, but also, and probably equally as important, are the adaptations that we and the communities within the Sierra can adapt to and adopt, and I think Renette's going to talk about some of those as well. It's just ways that we can provide solutions. You know, we may be part of the problem, but we also can be a huge part of the solution. And that's really what the focus was for this particular symposium. We're quite excited about that. The Conservancy intends and hopes to continue in a leadership role for convening people to come together and talk about potential solutions, and to also disseminate information. We haven't quite yet, but we're very close to getting information up on our website. So we hope to serve as a portal for additional information. I might also point out that the state of California has a watershed portal as well, but it has now a climate change portal, and I think the website is, the web address is showing on the TV now. And that, if you go to that website, you can have access to more information than you'll know what to do with. So I highly encourage you to take a look at that particular www.climatechange.ca.gov, and you'll have access to quite a lot of information.
Okay, I want to thank you. One of the things that I look forward to hearing more about are the action programs, and my greatest hope is that because of the communication systems that we have, you know, information travels so quickly that, you know, good examples of programs that work can be, you know, transmitted to so many people who can then work on what is already proven to be successful. So Bethany, thank you so much for coming. Hopefully your mic is working. We'll give it a test out. If not, you just talk really loud. But.
I can do that. So I'm from an organization called the Sierra Business Council. Is that loud enough?
It is.
We're based up in Truckee, and we work throughout the Sierra Nevada on different programs that try to link community vitality and social justice issues with environmental quality and well-being and economic prosperity. And so we're clearly, as an organization interested in the long-term sustainability of the Sierra Nevada, we're clearly very interested in climate change and the impacts it will have on the region. And looking at that data and some of that research, we started to think, well, how can we both mitigate climate change and the effects of climate change, but also increase the region's adaptive capacity to deal with climate change. And so our programs around climate change now are really addressing both of those two things. One, how can the region contribute to reducing greenhouse gases in the atmosphere? And two, how can, through reducing greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, how can we increase the adaptability of the Sierra Nevada to deal with changes on the horizon? So I have a graphic, if you want to put it up, and I'll start at 12 o'clock up there. This graphic shows a few key areas that we're looking in projects that target community, economy, and environment around this idea of mitigating and adapting to climate change. So starting at 12 o'clock, leadership training. This is really a critical element of our program at Sierra Business Council. We have an institute called Sierra Leadership Institute, and the idea here and how it relates to climate change is that the challenges are so complex that it's really going to take people from many sectors, from the nonprofit sector, government, business, just individuals in the community, all working together to try to come up with solutions. And so through this Leadership Institute, we train government officials, business leaders, nonprofit leaders in in collaborative techniques and facilitative techniques to take those leadership skills onward. And then moving clockwise, livable communities, something that we've been focusing for a long time through our planning program, is creating the tools for walkable, transit-oriented, mixed-use communities. This is critical because first, we want to reduce the transportation fuels which contribute to greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere, and also as an adaptive strategy, creating more walkable communities as the price of gas continues to go up, and this is related to climate change. It's going to be critical for people to be able to access things in their local economy and community. And so we have developed a commercial and mixed-use toolkit that's been used in communities around the Sierra and beyond, providing local planners and governments and developers the tools to do that.
Is any of this available on your website?
Yeah, this should all be available on our new website.
We'll be posting that momentarily.
And then moving on, renewable energy. This is critical. In the Sierra Nevada, we have tremendous energy assets and resources. We have the ability to produce biomass energy, thereby also reducing fuel loads on a lot of our forest lands, solar and wind and geothermal as well. There's potential there. And so trying to find ways to relocalize our energy supply is one effort we're working on there. Additionally, energy efficiency. Energy efficiency and conservation is really the cheapest, most reliable, most technologically feasible new source of energy. And so we're working with several major utility companies throughout the Sierra Nevada, sector by sector, to implement energy efficiency measures. Then moving on, local living economies. We're developing several Think Local First programs throughout the Sierra Nevada. These are designed to get people supporting independent, locally owned businesses to improve the self-reliance, self-sufficiency, and just efficiency of economic transactions in our local economies through supporting local businesses. And we're piloting programs like that in a few different communities around the region. And then green building and development. This is another critical piece of it. If we can, development is going to happen. If we can make it greener and more socially and environmentally responsible, then and using fewer greenhouse gases, then we're also creating or reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, which contribute greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, and improving energy efficiency. And so we're working on a few programs in this area. Namely, one that's quite interesting is working on the redevelopment of the Homewood Ski Resort. The owners of that property want to make it the greenest, most socially responsible ski resort in the country, and so we're working on developing that sustainability plan for them.
Are there plans also for the Sierra College campus up there to be green?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Absolutely.
there's a lot happening in the Truckee area that's really model for the rest of us.
Absolutely. There's another organization called the Sierra Green Building Association, SIGBA, and they're working on a lot of those issues as well. We're working closely with them. Then moving on to the environment. This touches on some of the statistics and data that Janet was presenting. Water is going to be big. It's already a big issue in California. It's going to be a bigger challenge with earlier snow melt and runoff. This will affect both the quality and quantity of water for drinking in California. About 2/3 of California's water comes from the Sierra Nevada. It's also an issue for power generation, because about 40% of California's power is from hydropower, and there's not enough storage capacity to store that water from earlier runoff to continue producing that power at peak needs. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is looking at how to do watershed restoration, how to delay snowmelt through a program called the Ski Area Erosion Control Program, which is a collaborative of many of the ski resorts in the country, or in the Sierra Nevada, looking at best practices for reducing erosion. And then another project area under the environment is looking at carbon sequestration. And with that, we're developing a program called the Sierra Nevada Carbon Cooperative, which is to work with land trusts and landowners and land managers throughout the region to conserve and manage, and in some cases reforest areas for carbon sequestration. This is really critical because in order to ensure that carbon that you're taking out of the atmosphere will be stored in perpetuity, you need to manage the forests for fire, pest, pathogens, and other threats to that forest land. So,
just to interrupt you a moment about sequestration so that people understand the term, it's the trees basically ingesting carbon and keeping it, and the fewer trees we have, the fewer opportunities for sequestration.
right, the only natural process by which carbon dioxide is taken out of the atmosphere and put back on Earth is photosynthesis. And so if we lose our forests, we lose our only process for doing that. And so conserving the forests and managing the forests so that they don't burn down is a critical piece of that. And additionally, this leads into the idea of a conservation strategy at a landscape level. Species will shift with climate change, and part of the goal of doing landscape level conservation and forest conservation is to provide those species somewhere to go, both plants and animals. We need a conservation strategy that focuses on connectivity and corridors so that species can move and can adapt. And so those two things sort of go hand in hand. And then finally, affordable housing is a critical piece of the adaptation and mitigation strategy to climate change. People need to live where they work, and this will reduce the burning of fossil fuels and contributions to greenhouse gas emissions by the transportation sector. And also, it's critical, given the projected more storms, more potentially disease, that people can live in the places that they work so that they can quickly respond to new disasters that we may not even imagine in those communities. And so with that, we're looking at establishing a community land trust and other affordable housing measures. And so those projects kind of target the three spheres of what we try to do at the Sierra Business Council, and around this idea of mitigating and adapting to climate change.
Well, that's great. I was very impressed at the symposium about what the Sierra Business Council is doing, and so I hope the viewers will pay attention to what's happening in Truckee and visit the website. So thanks, Bethany.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming all the way down from here. And Gary Reedy from Circle, please introduce your topic, because it's an interesting one.
Well, I'm going to start general, but then I will get specific to a particular critter who also is facing a challenging, changing climate, and one that we care a lot about. But I'm with South Yuba River Citizens League, most people know as Circle, and it was founded in 1983 and prevented dams that we can all the better evaluate these days as unnecessary from being built on the Yuba River, and subsequently effectively channeled so much grassroots citizen involvement into designating the South Yuba River as a wild and scenic river, as well as helping to establish some of our well-used and loved recreational lands along the South Yuba River. So how does Circle as a river-oriented organization, enter into the climate change world and these other organizations that are so clearly and effectively addressing the problems and the opportunities for people to take action around climate change? Well, Circle is known throughout the state of California and largely through our Wild and Scenic Environmental Film Festival throughout the nation as an extremely effective watershed organization. And we have a variety of projects and opportunities for people to get engaged in their watershed to address climate change.
You might explain watershed, because it's a term some people are not familiar with.
Well, all the water that falls in a particular portion of the Sierra Nevada, which drains out the mouth of the Yuba River near Marysville, falls somewhere within the 1,300 square miles of the Yuba watershed, a fairly large watershed amongst the 20 or so watersheds of the Sierra Nevada region.
So it's really where the mountains shed the water into rivers, valleys, and collecting to to house life and all other.
Yeah, in Europe they call it a
environment.
catchment, which might even be a better term given the look at where water falls on the land, all draining into one outflow. So we live in this area. We love the Yuba watershed. We love the Sierra Nevada, but the Yuba River is particularly inspiring to many people. And we already have so much interest from people who care and love the Yuba River to get involved in a way that helps us and our co-inhabitants here in this watershed deal with the changing climate. You know, there's so much to do with an atmosphere that is threatened, but there is also an opportunity to get on the ground about this and allow that inspiration of the river to compel you to take action and to get involved with a variety of causes, campaigns, and actions. So the largest thing that we're doing now is as a watershed organization, an organization looking at how we protect and restore the values in our watershed ecosystem, is getting involved in water management policy and watershed restoration projects, not just from the headwaters of the Yuba watershed. Donner Summit, for example, is threatened with some development that's not sustainable by many experts' opinions. On down through the lower Yuba River and even to the Feather River, the Yuba flows into, down to the San Francisco Bay and the Delta, which we know has some serious environmental problems. I mean, we really take that scope of influence from our local community and what we can do to affect conditions in that greater watershed region. Janet provided some very interesting statistics showing the increases in water temperature, air temperature, but that does translate into water temperature, and our cold water habitats that our native fishes and our amphibians depend upon is going to be migrating upstream, and our river is going to be going through a lot of changes with less snowpack, more rain on snow events. We're going to have a flashier river. We're going to have more extreme flows, both at the high end of floods and the low end. And this has big consequences for native species and the ecosystem. So being involved in a water management policy and watershed restoration projects is something that there's an opportunity for people to help us be effective in that realm. And I think with that, I'll go ahead and introduce salmon. The first slide shows that there are only 4 populations of spring run Chinook salmon in the Central Valley, and that is seen as a significant unit of salmon in the overall range of Pacific salmon. The Central Valley, they're evolutionarily significant there, and they're at risk of extinction. They're threatened officially with extinction, and there are only 4 populations actually remaining with any independence. And one of those 4 is the Yuba River spring run Chinook salmon.
Is
And
that
it's the one
pictured in pink?
colored pink, and the legend there shows that pink is at high risk of extinction. So without some serious changes in the Yuba River, we are going to lose our genetically distinct spring run Chinook salmon that have lived here for 350,000 years or more.
And losing a key species also would indicate more than that. I mean, in terms of the impact, it's not just going to impact that one fish.
Yeah, arguably salmon are one of the most significant keystone species that ever existed in the Yuba watershed. There were grizzly bears, there were wolves, there were red-legged frogs in abundance, and great gray owls too. But the salmon are still here. They're just knocking at some doors down below, and they have some big challenges ahead of them that, of course, we intend to help them overcome. And some pessimistic people may see climate change as a reason to say, well, look at with finite amounts of water available and all the challenges that we face as humans, limited water resources, we probably can't restore salmon. But we certainly don't take that as a legitimate option. Salmon can be restored. We can prevent them from going extinct. And to do so, there are changes that have to happen right here on the Yuba River. And in doing so, we build a more resilient ecosystem. It's not just about the salmon. There are scores of native plants that are threatened with extinction due to climate change, and plants in particular which can't migrate to a different portion of the Sierra Nevada to find new habitats. And habitats are greatly fragmented to begin with, even for animals that can move. There isn't necessarily somewhere to go. There is a wave of extinction that is predicted, and as Carrie covered, there's a great amount of biodiversity in the Sierra Nevada region. If we can restore salmon and prevent their extinction, we will be preventing the extinction of many other species as well, and that is really the goal.
Maybe we should take a look at some of the work that the Circle organization does in terms of dam analysis and salmon runs.
Sure.
So
did we get that second slide
yeah.
yet? Let's go ahead and look at that, because I think it is interesting and reiterate some points made earlier about warming air temperatures. Predictions of 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, the atmosphere to increase in California here does translate to increased water temperatures. The Yuba River area is circled in yellow, and you can see that with just 2 degrees Celsius warming of the air, the area in gray, which is predicted water temperatures above thresholds for our native cold water fishes, expands up into the Sierra Nevada. And of course, as the temperature goes up, the expansion of that warm water inhospitable to our native fishes goes on up too. So that's an important backdrop. Again, not just for salmon, but for a variety of species.
Right.
And as you suggested, Lou, let's look at a video
that Thomas Dunkel prepared. It was part of the last year's Wild and Scenic Film Festival, which featured again this year some tremendous films on the Yuba. But perhaps something you want to talk further on here as we look at the watershed.
Well, as with most watersheds in the Central Valley region, dams have blocked access to habitats by spring run chinook, steelhead, trout, green sturgeon, other anadromous species. In fact, more than 90% of the habitat for these anadromous fishes is blocked by dams. Englebright Dam is the upstream barrier for anadromous fish in the Yuba River. Salmon and steelhead are stopped here since 1941, when this dam was built, for the purpose of trapping debris from hydraulic mining and the speculative goals of those who wish to reopen hydraulic mining at that time. There is a small recreational reservoir behind the dam, and there are, there's a tremendous amount of sediment stored behind the dam. But Daguerre Point Dam, in the video at this point, it was built in 1906, stores a really insignificant amount of sediment. Although it does have fish ladders that allow access to 23 miles of the lower Yuba River, it's a complete barrier to green sturgeon, a native anadromous fish threatened with extinction. It's been around for at least 70 million years.
And so what is Circle's work in relation to these dams and other dams that have been built?
Well, we're taking a variety of actions to remedy the problem at Daguerre Point Dam. It's really, since 1906, or the ladders were built in the 1930s, nothing has been done to remedy this problem. It now is tied with diversions for irrigation, but the diversions could be re-engineered. The dam is unnecessary, and it needs to be removed, or full fish passage needs to be provided at Daguerre Point Dam. We've actually sued the Army Corps of Engineers and the National Marine Fisheries Service over their inaction about that problem for our threatened species.
Right, so a lot of work ahead. The Circle is an organization with hundreds, I think, how many were there at the Circle Film Festival?
550 volunteers.
550 volunteers, and you have all sorts of river river watchers. And
If I could just speak real briefly about that, I don't have time to list the many ways that volunteers can get involved with Circle right here in the Yuba watershed, but one new way that represents a variety of citizen-supported data gathering and assessment is a meadow health assessment project. Meadows are a natural way to store water and to provide ecosystem resilience. Virtually all the meadows in the Sierra Nevada are impacted by cattle grazing or dredging and diversion, and have now history now of neglect of those problems as well as exotic species. So we're actively assessing the health of meadows and using quite a lot of citizen involvement in doing that.
I think the Land Trust, too, is working in those areas as well. But we need to move on so that Renette is not left out. So, Renette, one of the co-founders of Power Up NC, and a real activist in our community. So thanks for being here, and educate us.
Power Up NC, I'm sure, is the youngest organization here. It's only about 1.5 years old. It came out of another organization called APPLE, Alliance for a Post-Petroleum Local Economy. About 1.5 years ago, we actually, before Power Up came into being, there was a community clean energy extravaganza we put together called Powerpalooza. And it was successful for its first year. We received about 1,000 attendees. And what we were focusing on was bringing alternative energy, clean energy, and local community solutions to the community. And we found out that that was really connecting and really working with the community. And we realized we should, myself and my partner, Kelly Casperson, who worked with the Powerpalooza, we realized that we could actually focus a lot of our attention, our work, on bringing solutions to the community. So we decided to create Power Up, and basically what we do is we find energy efficient programs and incentives for Nevada City specifically, but also for it to be shared with other rural communities in California. Currently, we've just acquired a contract with Nevada City municipality to conduct an energy audit and inventory as well, to lower their emissions as well as energy usage. Then we also have some really kind of boots on the ground programs. One of the things we are doing is we actually kind of select and organize and put together and then publicize PG&E free energy efficient workshops. This can range from anything from photovoltaic to HVAC systems to cool roof programs to just how to really button up your home. And these are actually free workshops that are available to anybody in the Sierras. Another thing that we're doing, and we're actually having a great time doing this, is we've been going to businesses throughout Nevada City and Grass Valley and Penn Valley and I think Downeyville and Sierra City and so on. And what we're doing is we're literally going into all these different businesses, and we are taking an inventory of all the different light bulbs. And then we're replacing all of them with CFLs, everything from floodlights to
CFLs are?
Compact fluorescent lights. And
which save energy.
About 75% of your energy. And so we've been going throughout all these different businesses, and we've been doing that for about, I think, 8 months now. And at this time, we've saved about 450 tons of carbon emissions just by these light bulbs alone, as well as about $200,000 you can find for an annual savings with these businesses now, just by changing over their light bulbs. So we're doing that, and one of the newer things we're doing this year is I think we have up to 500, I believe, homes that we can go to do an actual audit as well for low income. If you make less than $29,000 a year, you qualify, and we'll literally go in and we'll look at your home and we'll do weatherization. That includes everything from, if you have less than 4 inches of insulation in your attic, we'll blow in more insulation. This is free. This is provided from PG&E. And so we'll give you free insulation, we'll weather strip, even replace some doors, replace broken glass windows, also put or install air vents into your attic area. It's really an amazing program, and it's just to really button up people's homes who otherwise can't afford it.
And I say free in the sense that it does cost money, but in the long run it saves money, and it also saves the environment.
Well, it does, it absolutely, all the above. And it does cost us every time we pay our PG&E bill. There's a little tax we pay, and that's how this funding is coming about. So we're doing that right now, and that's going to be coming up this year. So we'll, of course, have this on our website when this is actually an active program, and people can just either call us or email us and sign up for it. So we're doing that. Right now, PG&E does provide this program, but we're hoping to actually kind of take that over for this area. That way we can be much more quickly available to get to the folks rather than have a 2-month wait, which is generally how long it takes for PG&E to come to these folks' homes to do this audit. So we have that. Also currently we, this last Christmas we did what was called the LED Christmas Light Exchange, where we had people bring in to us 2 strands of Christmas lights and swap out with LED light emitting diode lights. And this is about a 90% savings on your electricity. We swapped out about 700 strands of lights with other local residences. And then there's something else we're doing too, which is one of the more dear projects to my heart, and this is what's called Fever. And this is something we're doing with Nevada Union High School kids. I think currently right now I'm working with approximately 250 students in a variety of different organizations and classes, from their student congress to their leadership classes to their, what else is there, student body, to also environmental organizations, and we're creating a vision. And Fever stands for Futuristic, Energetic, Visionary, Environmental Revolution. And what we're doing, and this is really a pilot program that came out of my frustration with not moving fast enough with some of the local government.
Go Renette.
What we're doing, I know, don't get me frustrated, whatever you do. And so what I did was I basically approached these school kids and said, would you be willing to create the change we want to see in the world right here with our local schools? So what we did is we broke up, the other previous slide, we broke up our world in different categories, everything from governance to economy to environment. And then what we do is we break out into, okay, let's take environment here on this slide. Just tell me, what's the perfect environment? Imagine what your environment that you would like to see. And they're saying things like, we want it ecologically balanced, we want abundant wildlife, we want it to be sustainable, we want low impact societies. And then what we do is we're actually breaking off, let's say for instance, ecologically balanced, and we break that off into, okay, tell me what we can do right now today to get to that ecologically balanced world that we want. And they start breaking down into, okay, we can do this, 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 and that. And the objective is this whole entire year is to create that vision. And I said to them, I promise to give you the next 4 years of my life. And so, for instance, what we have here is clean air. So they broke down, how do we get to clean air? How can I specifically get to clean air?
And that's a problem particular in this
that's why we
part of the region.
This one as an example. So we have, well, we can carpool, buy hybrid, use public transportation, combine road trips, bicycle more, fly less, walk. And then what we're doing is, this whole year is about visioning, and I said, okay, I'll give you the next 4 years of my life. The next 3 years, what we'll do is we'll take some of those specific visions of ours, and we'll break them down, and then we'll start implementing them right here on the school campus. So this is ground zero for change. And I said to them, I said, please understand that you're going to be models for your parents and grandparents. I said, because the objective here is in 4 years' time to kind of hand over this campus to the next generation of students, saying, okay, this is the world we all want. And what we're trying to do is break it down into, okay, this is a huge vision that seems really out there and almost intangible, but when you break it down to what do I need to do right this very moment, well, I can walk instead of drive, it doesn't seem so overwhelming or such a large objective, which I think a lot of people in our world see climate change and all these energy efficient things we like to do is just too big. And it's actually no, in fact, it comes down to right now, this very moment, small little tasks. It's all a series of small tasks.
Well, it's also going to be hard to get kids out of their cars, but it's not really. They can still carpool, they can still do a lot of things, but in terms of thinking about their daily life and where they want the future to be, it's really great that what you're doing and involving them in this exercise, which is more than a visionary exercise.
Right, and it's again, it's not like you have to do more to change the world. What we were saying earlier is you just have to do things differently and align yourself to a higher vision, and then basically make sure that you take into consideration that vision when you're going about either your business or your education, your schooling, your day-to-day tasks and going about life.
It's great. It's great. Well, while and anything anybody want to add at this point that they just remembered that they forgot to say? This is your opportunity. We've got a couple minutes left.
Well, I did forget to mention that the dams in the Yuba watershed are going through a process of relicensing, and that's something that is a collaborative process, involves public comments and so forth, and we're at the beginning of a multi-year process.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, so I'm going to take a couple of minutes to while I'm talking, we'll be showing some websites that you can look up further information on, to investigate what people have said, to basically look at what's happening regionally and locally, because we live in an area that is tremendously active. You know, not only are we gifted with a beautiful environment that people are drawn to, but the environment is one that people want to preserve, not just for historic purposes, but for all the ways in which we enjoy it on a daily basis. And these are some of the websites that you can visit. Janet, did you want to say?
I'd just like to add another website, which is www.sierranevadaalliance.org. And they are soon to post the second edition of this toolkit that we wrote for people around the Sierra as to how to deal with adapting for climate change in processes like dam relicensing, wildlife, how to developing housing, et cetera, et cetera. So the toolkit will be at www.sierranevadaalliance.org.
And perhaps we can air that as soon as this is over. We did show it during your presentation. So again, I want to mention that it's very encouraging to see so many organizations alive, doing important work, doing work that can use volunteers and need our support. It's wonderful modeling, and not only are we paying attention to one another, but we're also paying attention to what's happening in other areas of the world that help us to learn faster, better, healthier. I want to say that this is the third in a series of shows that we'll be airing, and just from what you've all said, I hope that some of you will be back in future programs to develop what you've said in a little more in depth. And also, I hope to have PG&E here to do a workshop for the public, because this is a way in which we can take daily steps to really improve what our lives are like. And it does actually influence. I say, well, what is it really to turn off a light when I leave a room, or to close a door to make things a little bit more compact and save energy. And so there are things that really we can do on a daily basis, and actions that these folks are taking. So please support the organizations. Thank you all for the time that you've taken to help educate our community. And please continue to watch Climate Changes at NCTV and help out here in doing what we do. So thanks a lot for watching.